Hello, welcome back to the channel. It's me, Amy the Cat Lady, and today in the Wasteland Survival Guide we are talking about some of the other kind of psychological needs. So we're talking about romance and family today. So love and comfort, dating in the post-apocalypse. Humans are always going to human, and this includes searching for a life partner. Sure, the world's a radioactive nightmare, but what are the dating prospects like? So meeting people that you might be compatible with isn't easy when the population's so low and so spread out. Travelling to a new town is fraught with dangers. There's no internet, there's no telephone, there's no national newspapers. So the only way really to meet people is to meet them in person. So your choices are kind of limited. Of course, if you really want to, you could probably choose a non-human person, a synth, a ghoul, a robot, a wind Brahmin. We don't discriminate here. But say you do find someone, you find them attractive, they're funny, you've got things in common, that's great. So you want to take your new beau out on a date. Where'd you go? There's probably bars and restaurants, so you could go for some Mirelurk cakes or something. But what other options are there? Take a trip to the beach could lead to the Mirelurks eating you. Functioning cinemas, bowling alleys are rare. Sports aren't really a thing. I mean, Fenway Park's now Diamond City, so no trip to the ball game. They don't even know what baseball is. A romantic weekend in the glowing sea? Probably not. For fun outings, I think New Vegas wins in this category. They've got casinos, exotic dancers, and there's even comedy shows and live music. If you assume that a helpful courier has given the mysterious stranger's son a business card from Tommy Torini. Or you could spend a quiet night in a hotel suite that is at least nicer than most of the beds that you find around the wasteland. So what about commitment? You found your person, your lobster, your one true love. That's great. You want to make it official, so you propose marriage. Now what do? Marriage, for some people, is to do with their faith, but it's also a specific legal confirmation of the relationship. So if there's no legal system in place, can you still get married? I'd say yes, even if the marriage is more symbolic and less legally binding than it is in the real world. There are a couple of places in larger settlements like Rivet City and Diamond City that do have kind of religious leaders that provide marriage services. I'm actually kind of surprised that wasn't included in New Vegas, because Las Vegas is a common place for people to elope to or to hold a wedding. One of the first weddings I ever attended was in Caesar's Palace, but I guess Mr. House didn't really see that as something that was important for New Vegas from his point of view. But I think it would have been fun if the king did do marriage ceremonies or something like that. And given that the legal aspect of marriage isn't really a thing, what about if the relationship breaks down? How does divorce work? There's no legal contract. You could probably just say, right, I'm out, it's over, go your separate ways. There's probably not a lot of divorce lawyers around to kind of mediate and handle things like separation of assets, though in this situation, can you have a legally binding prenup? The law and fallout is very ad hoc, and there's not a lot that you can do to enforce these things or to even just to mediate these things. You can't force child support payments by taking money out of people's salaries when people are paid in bottle caps. Property ownership is largely a case of this is mine because I said so, instead of going through the kind of legal processes of purchasing a house or a piece of land that we would have to go through in the real world. So I think that's quite interesting. So if you do decide to divorce or to split up, you just have to really come to some kind of agreement yourself and then divide up any assets or property and just walk away. But I think it's kind of interesting that, there are potential options for getting married, but in terms of the law in a lot of places, it doesn't really kind of count for anything. It doesn't really mean anything. I do wonder if perhaps in the NCR, where they have established a lot of these kind of systems again, that maybe there is something there that, you go and you sign a document that says that you're married, and then you potentially get the benefits and ramifications of that. But in a lot of places it doesn't seem to be the case, so it is more of a symbolic commitment to the other person or robot, whatever you choose. So on that note, if you're in a committed relationship, you might be thinking about having children. Not everyone will want to, and that's absolutely okay. But some people might want to, and if you're not in a heterosexual relationship, then you might have to adopt or get creative with a surrogate or something like that. But love is love, and love finds a way. Otherwise, we are doing this the old-fashioned way, and I do mean old-fashioned, so let me explain. I'm not going into the mechanics of how babies are made. Fallout is rated for adults, so I would hope that we all know about that. But in the Fallout universe, the standard of healthcare has plummeted. So what does that mean? Before the world had good healthcare standards, a lot of women died in childbirth or lost their child. Early childhood diseases that are now easily prevented caused a lot of child loss as well, unfortunately. So a lot of people back then tried to have as many children as they possibly could for the hope that at least one was going to survive to adulthood. But having a baby was a risk for women. There was a lot of problems with sort of, post-birth infections and bleeding and things like that nobody had any tools to deal with or to prevent. And one of the most important breakthroughs in maternal mortality was hand washing, and yes, I'm 100% serious about that. So there's a Hungarian doctor by the name of Ignaz Semmelweis, hopefully pronounced that okay, who discovered that washing your hands prior to going into care for a labouring mother reduced the mortality rate. So what used to happen was that doctors would go from, examining cadavers in the morgue straight to the delivery rooms. But by implementing hand washing in between, survival rates got better. And this happened in 1846, so this was actually before the germ theory of disease had been proven by Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch. So they realised that washing hands helped, but they didn't really know entirely why that was the case until germ theory and bacteria and things were kind of confirmed and discovered. So sometimes what you need is very simple, but in the modern world we have a lot of things available to us that help prevent maternal mortality, that improve outcomes for pregnancy and childbirth, and improve outcomes for neonatal care, which is the newborn babies. So prenatal health checks, ultrasound scans, amniocentesis, where they take some of the fluid from the sac around the fetus, and they can do genetic screening and test for various things, vitamins and supplements to help manage the pregnancy. Even, testing for things like gestational diabetes that can cause complications. The list goes on. There's loads of different things for helping with making labour safer, medications, epidurals, caesarean sections. There's loads and loads of stuff available to modern medicine. And when the baby is actually born, you can, they'll get tested for things that they tend to get a vitamin K injection, which helps prevent certain blood clotting problems in newborns. The NICU, the neonatal ICU technology is actually amazing, especially for looking after premature babies. The APGAR testing at birth that helps identify certain problems. So mortality is much, much lower than it used to be because of the technology, the medications and the knowledge that we have that actually improves these outcomes significantly. So what about Fallout? Most of this technology is unavailable in the Fallout universe. Either it never existed, or it's broken and irreparable and nobody has anything that's functioning. Even the autodocs, it's very rare to find one that's fully functional. So, the technology that they had in the Fallout universe, most of it is not available. There's not a lot of pharmaceutical companies out there making medications, so a lot of the useful ones have probably been long since scavenged, and if you're outside of the good vaults, so to speak, there's not really a lot of OB/GYN practitioners available, so most children that are born in Fallout are born in less than ideal conditions. The issue with radiation as well is a factor, so radiation exposure reduces fertility and increases the risk of birth defects and problems in fetal development. The optimal health of the mother will confer the best chance for a healthy offspring, and radiation doesn't help that situation at all. It can actually increase the risk of something going wrong, as well as the lack of access to medication, to oxygen, to the incubators for the newborns, surgical tools and equipment, and people that know what they're doing. There's a lot of that is lacking, so delivering a child is a lot more like it used to be before we really had modern medicine, midwives, and all the knowledge, which means you're kind of taking a risk. And then, of course, after the child is born, assuming that it survives, you need to make sure it doesn't get eaten by dangerous wildlife, stumble into landmines, or the myriad of other dangers in the wasteland. So having children in fallout is risky, so you couldn't really blame people for not wanting to bring children into this broken and destroyed world. But some people still choose to do it, even with the lack of prenatal and postnatal care. And of course accidents do happen, and given the lack of medical care for pregnancy, it's very unlikely that other reproductive health care is available, like contraception and medications and procedures. So if there is an unplanned pregnancy, options potentially are limited, and it is still going to be a potential risk to both mother and baby that something might go wrong just because this stuff isn't available. But the world's going to keep on turning, and of course if everybody that lived in the wasteland decided not to risk having children, then humanity would die out, because the alternative forms of humanity that we come across, like the super mutants and the ghouls, are sterile and can't reproduce. This fact is what the Master didn't even realise in the original Fallout, and telling him this and showing him the proof of this is how you can talk him round without a fight, because he realises that the Unity is a dead end eventually because the super mutants are sterile, and the only way to make more is to have humans to dip in FEV. So somebody needs to keep humanity going if society's ever going to be rebuilt. So the choice is there, but you're accepting some risks, and handling the process of pregnancy and labour could be a lot more difficult and a lot more fraught with risk than it is in our modern world, where we have lots of technology and things. So quite an interesting concept, and of course there's going to be plenty of people that decide that it's not worth the risk, or people that just don't want to have children, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a choice if you want to have children or not, and some people just don't want to. But if you do want to, then you do want to make sure that you can get the best care possible to give you the best chance of a good outcome for everybody. So, starting a family, it's not for everybody, but some people are going to want to do that. So knowing how to approach it to try and minimise the risks as much as possible will be helpful. So hopefully you found that interesting. I think the story about the doctor who realised that one of the best things that could be done to prevent postnatal infections, so what would happen often is, because giving birth is a messy business, I'll not get into too much of it because I know that YouTube doesn't like all that stuff, but it's a messy business. There's a lot of body fluids, there's a lot of mess happens. So one of the risks is that infection gets into the woman's reproductive tract, so up into the uterus, which is something that's generally called metritis, which is infection inside the womb. So that used to be one of the most common causes of women dying just after they've given birth to a child. And this guy realised it was because the doctors weren't washing their hands after dealing with deceased patients, or potentially, just any other patients. So literally soap and water saves lives. So something that's worth keeping in mind. Hopefully you found this interesting. I did kind of hint at a couple of potentially inflammatory topics, let's say, and I'm all for debate and discussion in the comments, but we're going to keep it respectful, and we're going to understand that different people have different opinions on these things, and we keep it polite and respectful. If not, then you're out of here. But if you enjoyed this and you want to hear more, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.